Hi Jada, it was a long time ago when you gave us interview for Veralo 24. It was a long time ago and it was different circumstances then and we have different circumstances now. But before we're gonna talk through it, what happened to you all over the last few years, I would say, I'd like to ask you about the jihadi bride and the comment what is happening in UK. Well, how would you comment that there is a discussion in the media, mainstream media mainly, and there's a lot of voices that this woman shouldn't be banned from UK and she should keep her citizenship, British citizenship. How would you like to comment on that?
I think it's crazy. First of all, it's good to be back and good to be speaking with you again. It's been a long time. But yeah, on this issue of Shamima Begum, the jihadi bride, look, she left our country to go and join a terrorist organization that has been bombing and beheading and maiming people across the world. So any discussion of her retaining her British citizenship is absolutely ludicrous. Um, and I put a video out saying that very thing, and I got banned on social media for it. So there's not just a discussion about bringing her back, but anybody who speaks out against her is currently being penalised. Now, she has been told that, or her family have been told that her citizenship has been revoked, but this message was given to the family with a whole heap of appeal forms for her to overturn that decision. She will be back, mark my words. Or I think maybe more likely is that some liberal being like Trudeau will step forward and offer her asylum. But just putting that situation into context, here we have a woman that joined a terrorist organization. People are supporting her return to the UK, and I am a British citizen, never been a member of any sort of terrorist organization, and I'm currently being made homeless. So there's got to be something going wrong.
For sure, we're gonna come back to this homeless. We're living with a home of yours, but the thing is, I would like to start. You show the public you've been one of those people who show the British public and the whole international public terrible thing, which is a grooming gangs. You've been protesting against it. You've been telling your fellow citizens about this terrifying crime. I would like to ask you, first of all, if you once again can explain what is the grooming gangs, what is behind it, what was it for the Polish public, and I would like to explain the Polish public why you've been sent for exposing this to jail.
So this grooming gang epidemic has been sweeping across the UK for decades. This isn't a new thing. Basically, there are thousands, tens of thousands of children tortured, British children, groomed, raped, and tortured by Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. And because the perpetrators of these crimes were almost entirely, almost solely Pakistani Muslims, the authorities in England, in Britain, covered this up because they were too scared to say it's Muslims doing this to non-Muslim British children. There is a pattern of behaviour with these Muslim men. They were too scared that if they said that, they'd be called racist. So the police and social services covered this up. It led to tens of thousands of girls being groomed and raped. I mean, just to put that into context, in one town in Telford, 2,300 girls were subject to these grooming gangs. They were groomed and raped. That's the equivalent to two entire secondary schools, every single pupil in two entire secondary schools having been raped by Muslim men in Telford. And we're not talking about a huge area here. So this has been an ongoing epidemic. And there was a case within the last couple of years of a British child, walked into a fast food restaurant, a pizza shop in Ramsgate in Kent. She went into the shop, she was lost, she asked for directions. Instead of giving her directions to get home, the owner of the shop and three of his friends kidnapped the child, took her up to the flat above the shop, and they gang raped her 4 times each. Um, and so the locals in the community of Ramsgate contacted me, knowing that I campaign on these issues, contacted me and said, can you go and highlight this issue? Because the men are all on bail. They're walking the streets. So that we know that they've raped this child, but they've been bailed so they can continue working in the same shop and living in the same flat where this took place. So I just simply went to the area, I leafleted the neighbours, let everyone know that these monsters are living and working in that building. Went to the court, confronted these guys, and I got 9 months in jail. Just 9 months in jail, no questions asked. The judge was adamant I was in the wrong. You know what he said I did? I harassed them. I harassed gang rapists, and I've just served 9 months in jail.
This is absolutely unbelievable. I cannot even imagine. I live in the UK for 15 years, and I cannot understand it, how fast and how bad the United Kingdom has changed over the years. But tell me, how was the prison time? Did you have problems like Tommy Robinson, who been sent among Muslims for, like, I would say, death sentence?
Yeah, so the first prison that I was sent to was a Category A prison, which holds the most prolific offenders. I was taken down the block to segregation as soon as I got there. Spent 6 weeks in complete isolation. And the reason for that is that upstairs in the cells above, on the normal landings, not locked up in isolation like me, free to walk around and mixed with the public, were Islamic terrorists, some of whom had actually been plotting to cut my head off, and they were upstairs, and I was kept downstairs in this segregated cell like an animal. So that was quite an experience. And after 6 weeks of that, I was moved to a different prison, and I spent my time there on a wing. And then something very interesting happened. So from my first time in prison, in the first prison, when I spent the time in segregation, to the time I got to the second jail, I learned that one of these Islamic terrorists had put a hit out on me. So she'd ordered my murder. The person that had been ordered to carry out the killing of me arrived at the second jail, where I was on an open wing. Fortunately, as you can see, I'm still here and I lived through it, but that was quite an experience. And you could almost put it down to a government setup when they send someone who's high profile into an environment where they know there's a danger of them being killed. It makes you wonder whether the state would rather see the likes of myself and Tommy Robinson completely taken out.
Why the British government hates you so much?
The British government hate anyone that speaks out against Islam, against extremism, against grooming gangs. If you don't toe the politically correct line, if you don't conform to liberal values, which I don't, as you know, you just become an enemy of the state. And there are very few people, in fact, well, there's no one really at the moment that's actually, apart from myself, that's actually pushing traditional Christian values. Britain has been completely destroyed by liberalism. People pushing the LGBT agenda, people pushing this non-binary. Our kids are being told that they can identify as whatever sex they want, whatever race they want. I mean, this stuff is being rammed down the throats of our children, and the British public for some reason, are accepting it. And it's because it's become normalized. People are being indoctrinated. And I mean, for me, this is the biggest threat. Forget Islam, forget Muslims, right? Because of course they are a threat, and we've seen the immediate threat that they pose. We've seen terrorist attacks, people have been bombed, shot, beheaded. We've seen all of that. We've seen grooming gangs, horrific crimes against children, raped, groomed, tortured, set on fire, terrible. But at the root of this, that the people that are enabling this are the British establishment, the British government. And so before they let someone like me speak out and say, this is their fault and we all need to stand together against the government, they'll just lock me up and throw away the key.
Of course, this is not the end of your troubles, because now you have a, court case after court case, and you just facing the, for me, it's like completely stupid accusations. I don't know even how to call it. Jada, why are you homeless?
Because the British establishment have made me homeless. They forced me into homelessness. So this is going to sound almost too ridiculous to be true, but I promise you this is what has happened. I left prison in November and I moved to my home in Northern Ireland. My house that I pay a mortgage on, that's empty, I moved to that house when I left prison. I was then told by the government, by the probation service, I'm not allowed to live in my house. I have to live in one specific hotel room, so one hotel in the southeast of England that I have to pay for 8 months. I can't live in my house. Now, I am no longer involved in Britain First. I'm no longer associated with any movement. I've got no income at the moment. I've had payment systems shut down. I'm dragged in and out of court every week. I don't have the money, and I don't know anyone that's got the money to live in a hotel for 8 months whilst they're also paying their mortgage on an empty house. So I just said, look, this is madness. I'm going home. So I moved to my house in Northern Ireland, and since then, the authorities are hounding me, absolutely hounding me. I'm currently what's known as unlawfully at large, or on the run. I've been taken into court, and the court of England have said, you must return to England and be homeless. So they won't allow me to stay in Northern Ireland because they want me in England where I can be monitored. But they know that I've nowhere to live in England. So instead of saying, look, this lady needs a roof over her head, they said to me, we don't care if you are homeless and living on the streets, you must return to England so that we can watch what you are doing, because we can't watch you in Northern Ireland. And the court just upheld that decision to force me into homelessness.
It is completely against any human rights. It is against, I don't know, every single law, because it seems that the grooming gang rapers have more rights than political activists like you.
Yeah, I was in jail with people that had, I was in jail with people that were in for murder, torture, people that had killed their children. And these women that I was in jail with, that I know for a fact, they will not be subjected to this level of pressure when they get out of jail. They'll probably be given a house, given money, given support. All I've had since I left prison is just a sustained attack by the establishment to try and make me crumble, basically. This isn't designed, they're not trying to toughen me up or do me a favor. This is literally, these tactics are to break me so that I say, I can't do this anymore. I need to step out of the public eye, stop speaking out against the government, stop speaking out against Islam, stop speaking out against grooming gangs. They've defeated me. I have to quit. That's what they want me to do. Unfortunately for them, my kind of hardline Christian mentality is blessed are the persecuted. So the more they throw at me, kind of the more I will just thrive and keep going. But it is, I'm not going to say it's not tough, because, you know, I am a woman, and life is pretty difficult at the moment.
Jada, what happened to Britain First? You've been vice chief of this party, and you're not part of this anymore. What happened?
I made the decision to leave Britain First for a number of reasons. It hasn't gone in the direction that I would have liked, or that I wanted to align myself with. Now, obviously, I spent a long time in prison, and so there was a long period where Britain First was carrying out certain activities, and they're not where I think the direction I thought the party should be going. So it was pretty tough in jail. I didn't really have the support that I would have expected. So I made that decision, and I'm very happy with the decision that I've made. I will be going completely independent. I have a great network of people that I'm already working with. And really, it's just a matter of time to get these legal battles out of the way. I've just stood trial again twice in Belfast. I'm waiting for the sentencing of that. So once I have all these issues out of the way, I can really hit the ground running. But I can assure you and everyone, all of your viewers, that me leaving Britain First is the beginning of something much bigger. It's not the end by any means. And I feel very positive about the decision that I made.
I have to ask you, do you plan to create another political party?
Well, I'm a political activist, so I have no plans to launch an actual movement at the moment. I think I just need to get myself established in what I'm doing and really get back into the network of people that I've built up over the last 5 years since I've been engaging in politics. And, you know, one of the issues that I have is that a lot of my contacts are overseas, and at the moment, SO15 counter-terror police are withholding my passport from me. So I can't leave the country. One of the first places I will be going when I get my passport is Poland, I can assure you. But these are the kind of pressures that are being put on me. It's just designed to stop me in my tracks, but it won't. And there will be big things coming in the future. So,
Jada, question is, I want to ask you again about the prison time, because it seems, I mean, the British law says that they're responsible for the prisoner's life when they're in prison. But you tell me horrifying stories that they tried to kill you, they plotted to kill you. How was the whole guards? How was the whole managers of prison behaving towards you? Can you describe us how it was in this matter?
yeah, look, I'll be honest. I think in terms of the screws, we call them, the prison guards that were working on my wing, I had no problems with them. They have a very difficult job to do, in that they are supposed to be impartial. Now, certainly with me, I didn't get any problems from the screws themselves. And I don't know how they do that job. First of all, I couldn't lock someone in a cage every day. I just couldn't, because that's what it is. It's like it's a tiny cage, not fit for an animal. I couldn't do that. But also I couldn't have that level of impartiality when there were sex offenders on the same wing as me. These women had sexually abused children, and they were on this wing. So in terms of the screws themselves, I didn't have any problems, thankfully. But there is, you know, the decisions that are made with regards to myself are made much higher up. So the decision to put me in a prison with Islamic terrorists came from much higher up. The decision to put me in prison in the first place came right from the top, from the Attorney General. So you have to wonder, right? The reason I went to jail was for 4 words. So I went and saw these Muslim rapists, and I said 4 things to them. And for those 4 words, I was in prison. Now, these are the words that I said. I called them dirty Muslim raping bastards. Now, 2 of those words are factual. They were Muslims and they were rapists. So 2 of those words were subjective. So my opinion was that they were dirty bastards for what they did. For those 4 words, I lost 9 months of my life. And when I left prison, I saw another Islamic or Muslim groomer who had been given a suspended sentence for grooming a 13-year-old child, a suspended sentence. So he didn't go to jail, but I went to jail for calling them what they are.
If you could turn back time, would you post those tweets which was retweeted by Donald Trump?
Yes. If I could turn back time, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't even change what just put me in jail. See, I was asked this. When I was in the jail, I was visited by probation and counter-terror police, and they looked at me very kind of condescendingly and said, "How is it?" And I just said, this will not crush me. Don't have any sympathy. I don't regret any of it. Those men deserved the words that I said to them. And as for the retweets from Donald Trump, that was an absolute honor. It's just a shame that the government over here felt that they actually had the right to tell President Trump to remove those tweets, which he never did. My Twitter was shut down and it's gone. I'm banned from Twitter. But hey, it was still worth it.
Jada, do you think that the system is closing up? I mean, look, Alex Jones from Infowars.com was banned from every single social media. You've been banned from every single social media. You're absolutely, they're walking after you everywhere you go. They fixing new trials, new court, trials. So you think the system is closing up, and those who are opposing, those who are saying the truth, those who are opposing against all these changes, gonna be wiped out?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know how far the state are going to go. They are certainly, in terms of social media, forget it. Anyone that's remotely patriotic or nationalist, gone from social media, banned. We're not just talking on Facebook and Twitter. That even comes down to like YouTube censorship, and the mainstream media just won't run anything unless it's complete lies. So yeah, I think times are hard. For anyone who speaks out, they're hard. But here's the thing, and this is what I've been saying for years, the more people that speak out, the harder the job is of the government to suppress that. Because imagine if Britain was a country like Poland, where the people were just inherently nationalist. They love their country, they love their people, as they should be. If the British population were as dedicated and as vocal about their rights and their love for their country as the likes of Poland, for example, then it would be too difficult for the state to remove everyone's freedom of speech. Because once the country comes together, and it doesn't matter, in fact, if you agree with what I'm saying or with what Tommy Robinson's saying, it doesn't actually matter. What matters is millions of men fought, bled and died for us to have the right to free speech. And the government are taking that away from us unless what we say suits their agenda. That's not free speech. That's police state tactics. So I urge everyone to just persevere and keep. It is going to be difficult. It's difficult for me. You're not necessarily going to face the troubles that I've got, but I always urge the British public to stand with me, because if we all came together and said, we're not going to accept this restriction of our freedom of speech, the government would have a battle on their hands and they would have to stand down.
Jada, how it is the relation, if there is any, between you and Tommy Robinson? Because you just, maybe it's my feeling, but, I admire you both. You absolutely are heroes in my eyes. The free speech hero fighters. But in some ways, I feel like there's some disturbance in the force between you two. Maybe you disagree with that, but you know what? What's going on? How are you comment on that?
Yeah, no, there's not any kind of disturbance as such. So I Tommy was used to be the leader of the EDL, and very briefly I went along to the EDL to see what it was about. It wasn't really my thing at the time. It just wasn't quite structured enough. I think I was looking for something a bit more organised. Of course, that was a street movement. It wasn't a political party, so it held rallies in the street, and they were effective. They got thousands of people out on the streets. Um, so then I went and joined Britain First, and I spent 5 years in a leadership role there, and I'm now independent. Now Tommy's been kind of aligned with different organisations, and then he's been independent for some time, and we've actually along the way our paths have crossed again. We've done a bit of filming together a few years ago. You know, there's no bad blood. There's no real separation as such in terms of where we've been going. But here's the big difference between Tommy and I, is that I'm just far more traditional and I guess hardline in my outlook. So Tommy Robinson has said on many occasions that he is against Islam and the Islamification of the UK. But he's also said that he doesn't like to be labelled as right wing or extreme because he supports gay marriage. He supports kind of this LGBT agenda. He supports multiculturalism. I suppose these are values that I would consider to be very liberal. And he's actually said he's labelled himself a few different things, you know, a liberal or a Zionist or what have you, you know, different labels that he's given himself. And I know that a lot of the time he's hitting back at the media because the media is saying, well, you're a racist and you're this. And he's saying, look, I'm not actually. I have no problem with multiculturalism. I just don't like Islam. I have no problem with gay marriage. I just don't like Islam. So see, where I differ is I am against Islam. I am against gay marriage. I am against this LGBTQP agenda that's being shoved down our kids' throats. I'm against all this non-binary nonsense where our kids can choose their gender or their race or whatever. I'm against abortion. So I'd be considered very hardline in Britain, probably one of the most extreme, for want of a better word, nationalists that you would find. And indeed, the state, when I was in prison, the state put me on a watch list for extremists, and they sent me official paperwork saying you are officially an extremist, which I thought was quite amusing. I don't think my views are extreme. I just think that they're traditional and they're patriotic. So that's the difference, I guess, between Tommy and I, is we wouldn't see eye to eye on those issues. But life isn't about seeing eye to eye on every single issue. It's about doing what's right for the cause. And I'd sooner have people speaking out honestly about their beliefs and their views than sitting back and doing nothing. I just feel that the more my task, I feel, is to try and bring people back to the more traditional values that I would like to see reinstated in our Christian nation.
Jada, have you ever considered migration to a different country?
Yes, I have actually. Well, I think eventually there is a possibility that I'll be exiled. So, and that is that's not a crazy woman saying, "Oh, they're after me." But if I look at what they're doing to me right now, I don't know when that will stop. So I haven't given it any real thought or planning, but I have in the past, for example, I've been offered kind of refuge, for want of a better word, political asylum. There are individuals that have suggested that I go to to their country, Poland being one of them, so that I have a bit more freedom and I'm not under constant attack and constant persecution and constant surveillance, and where it's quite normal for me to express my nationalist views. Although I've no passport at the moment, so no route out of this country, and I certainly feel like I've got a lot more work to do here for now.
A few weeks ago, we could see it on the YouTube, your arrest at Gatwick Airport. What was the reason for them to arrest you?
So when I left prison, I was put on something called a PSS, a post-sentence supervision order. And that is currently the bane of my life. It restricts me from leaving the country. It restricts me from staying at an alternative address. And it's restricting me from living in my own home. So the probation service have said, according to this supervision order, I'm not allowed to live in my own home in Northern Ireland. I have to be homeless in England. I refused to come back to England. I said, I'm not coming back and living on the streets. I have a house in Northern Ireland. That's where I'm going to live. I had told my probation officer that I wanted to fly back to England on the 19th of December to spend the Christmas period with my godchildren. And when I landed at Gatwick Airport, armed police came and took me off the plane, took me to the police station, held me in the cells, and then took me into court the next day, purely because I had been living in my house in Northern Ireland rather than homeless in England. That's why I was arrested.
You know what? I just cannot even believe it. When you're explaining that, I just cannot believe it that the used to beacon of hope, of free speech, of democracy, which was United Kingdom, now is like worse than communist state.
Yeah, it is. This is a police state. This is like communism. It's people's freedoms have gone. And do you know the most concerning thing for me is that whilst our freedoms are being restricted, there doesn't seem to be enough concern. Like even just the fact that I know I could get 100 British people in a room and say, you know, put your hand up if a relative of yours served in one of the world wars, or the Second World War at the very least. And you'd see loads, if not all hands in the air. Yet the sacrifice of our relatives so that we have the freedom of speech, we have freedom of expression, we have a right to, you know, live peacefully and have a family life. All of those freedoms are being taken away from us. And I just don't know what it's going to take for people to rise up and to respond. That we've seen a soldier, we've seen Lee Rigby have his head cut off on the streets of London. Was that not enough? We've seen children blown up in Manchester Arena. That wasn't enough, no? I mean, what's enough? What's enough? People are outraged when I was removed from social media, and now Tommy's been removed from social media, and people are outraged by it, but there needs to be some sort of uprising, because until this country comes together, and we'll always be polarized because of the nature of politics in this country, the left wing and right wing are so polarized. But I don't care whether you are a member of the Socialist Workers' Party or the British National Party, which are, you know, the most polarized two groups. I don't care what you're a member of. You have a right to express your opinions. You have a freedom of speech. And I wouldn't want to see anyone have that restricted. If it's inciting terrorism, then we shouldn't allow it. But we've got very clear guidelines. So people saying, I am concerned about thousands and thousands of girls being raped by Muslim grooming gangs should not be silenced. That is a very normal thing to say. So I just, again, I feel like my role and There are very few people in the country. Tommy's very active, but aside from that, there are very few people that are actively trying to kind of wake up the population and encourage them to do something. I think that the time's coming though, and the British people will rise up.
I wouldn't be so optimistic about it because the way I see it from a little bit different angle, which living in the United Kingdom, for example, the last case with Tommy Robinson, he exposed the corruption of BBC Panorama. Yeah, he exposed it, and look, the government is not even afraid of public doing these things what they doing to him, doing to you. They're just not afraid of public anymore. They don't give a damn what the whole population of Brits will think about this things which even communists didn't do. That's the problem. It's just the fact that I look at it. How I cannot understand it. Why the British citizens, British people, see it and they don't react. Why?
So here's my theory on that. I think the reason the British public are so reluctant to do anything is because we haven't suffered. We haven't suffered enough. Now that might sound a bit strange, but here's what I mean. You go to places like Poland, you go to places like Hungary, and you will come across people in front of you within a generation that have suffered. They have lived under strict regimes, oppression, communism, right? They know what that's like. It never leaves them. It leaves a bitterness, and then that carries on. And even to an extent, my home in Northern Ireland this is a very unique part of the United Kingdom because of the troubles in Northern Ireland, and because they were so recent, we're only talking a few decades ago, because of that, people remember suffering, people remember seeing their relatives getting hurt or killed and reading newspaper reports and switching the news on, and people remember that. Like, you know, youngsters now are just a generation away from those who are actually engaged in combat. So the people here in Northern Ireland, they get it 100%. They get how important it is to fight for your freedom of speech and expression, because people fought for those freedoms, right? And they're not to be taken for granted. And the same in Poland, the same in Hungary. But the thing is, with Britain, we haven't suffered. We're starting to suffer, and people are starting to realize that we're suffering, but they've almost been blinkered. Like, they don't realize what's going on. As long as they can take their children to school and watch the X Factor and go on holiday, they can pretend it's not happening to them, but it's starting to happen to them because it's going across the board now. Anyone who says anything about grooming gangs is being penalised. People are being jailed for making comments about Islam or putting bacon outside a mosque. You know, just stupid acts that are catching 18 months prison sentences. You wouldn't see that anywhere else. So I'm not confident that in the immediate state, the British public will do anything, right? But I think there will come a point where such a vast swathe of the population will be silenced and gagged by the government and social media, that will lead to a desperation. Because if you can't put your point of view across, what do you do? And I think, and I fear, that the government have not considered what the next step is for people, for the British. They either completely submit to this police state regime, submit to Islam, submit to liberalism, submit to all of it, or there's an uprising. I actually don't know which of the two most people would prefer. Sometimes I wonder if the British public would prefer to submit, because that's what they are doing at the moment. They are living under submission. I pray that my people wake up and rise up, because there's enough of us to make a difference.
Last few questions. Brexit, I have to ask you about that, this madness which is going on. And the thing is, you think the Brexit will come to the end and there will be a Brexit? Or the mainstream media, I mean, the whole establishment will prevent it?
No, I don't think there'll be a Brexit. I think the establishment have done a very good job at creating an environment of fear and panic in the British population. Look, here's the thing. We were given a choice, a democratic vote, and we chose to leave the European Union. We were told what that would entail, because the government used millions of our taxpayers' money to send us booklets saying, if you vote to leave, we will leave the single market, we will leave the customs union, we will leave this. We said, yep, great, we want to leave. We didn't say we want to leave with a deal, we want to leave. Now the government are saying, well, if we can't strike up a deal, then we'll have to have a second vote, because the people didn't realise what they were voting for. This is what the government is saying, that I didn't understand. I'm so stupid that I didn't understand what I was voting for. I knew exactly what I was voting for. So did the rest of the 17 million people that voted to get out. We knew. We wanted to leave the European Union. We didn't want a deal. We wanted to go. No deal, out the door. Saving billions of pounds every year, taking ourselves out of the customs union, the common market, pulling ourselves out of a situation where we're being forced to take in hordes of migrants. And these aren't genuine refugees. These are like economic migrants. We knew what we were voting for, but the establishment have put so much panic into the public, saying, you're all going to lose money and lose your houses and everything's going to be difficult and there'll be no food and there'll be no medicine. It is absolute crap. That is not going to happen. But they've done this for a period of, nearly 3 years. And the last hurdle within the next few weeks will be the government saying, right, because we can't reach a deal, let's see if we should delay it and have a second vote. And that in itself is enough, in my opinion, for the people of this country to wake up. Because when your democratic vote is rubbished because it's not the right one, according to the government, then you are not a free man and you should rise up against your government.
Yeah, I think it won't be ignition because look, even in Ireland, they had a second referendum about the Lisbon Treaty, and Irish did nothing. It did absolutely nothing. It just to say, okay, it's fine, it's okay. You think that question about Theresa May? You think she's so bad, or she's just pretending to be bad in this matter?
Well, she was an avid Remainer, so she campaigned throughout the referendum. Theresa May campaigned to stay in the European Union. So she should never, ever, ever have become Prime Minister of this country. You cannot have someone leading us through such a huge process, knowing that she was ferociously against it. That doesn't make sense. So she shouldn't have become Prime Minister anyway. But in terms of just incompetence, yeah, I think she's just weak. I think she is completely weak. She hasn't got the British people's interest at heart. She should just go to Europe and say to the other member states, look, my people voted to leave. That's our position. We're going. If you want to offer us something in exchange for, I don't know, some sort of relationship, we're open to suggestions. But failing that, you don't offer us anything, we're going. We're keeping our 39 billion. We're keeping all of the money that we've been throwing into this pot for these unelected bureaucrats. We're keeping all of that and we're going because that's what our people want to do. And she should have been hardline. But she's not going to be hardline because she didn't want to leave in the first place. She wants to remain. She wanted to remain and she still does. And we will not be leaving the European Union. We won't get our Brexit, I can assure you.
Jada, Is there anything would you like to address to Polish people? Would you like to say to Polish people?
Just that one of the most overwhelming things about this whole process, going back to, I guess, last year in March in 2018 when I was put in prison, one of the most overwhelming things has been the amount of support that I've received from the Polish community in Britain and Poland. So I was locked in a cell and didn't have contact with loved ones, didn't have contact with anyone really that was involved in the right wing in Britain. I had complete separation from everyone, but I had lots and lots and lots of letters coming into prison. And so, I mean, a disproportionate amount of them were from Polish supporters in Britain and in Poland saying, we're thinking of you. People sent me money into the jail just to keep me going. They sent me cards. People sent me pictures drawn by their children to stick on the cell wall just to lift my spirits. I mean, that was really so humbling, and it showed how considerate and generous the Polish community are, because I could have gone to prison and been completely forgotten, but I wasn't, and I will never ever forget what the Polish people did for me while I was in prison, and since I've left. I mean, the support's been overwhelming, but that was very special to me, and I'll never forget that. So thank you all.
Jada Franson, thank you very much for interview. Thank you very much indeed. And I hope it's not gonna be our last interview, and we're gonna have a chance to speak over the Skype or even here in Warsaw when you're gonna visit our lovely country. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.